Hello and welcome back to Halo Forever, and with what's probably my most frustrating video that I've put together and frustrating set of tests and benchmarks that I've made, and I'll get on to why shortly. As you can see, this is what I'm dubbing as the best settings that I could find for 1080p in Halo Infinite multiplayer. I know I did whiz through them right at the end. I'm going to go through those slower times, so if you want to jump ahead to the last, I don't know, 40-50 seconds of the video, they will be there slower. I'm going to also break them down as this video goes on and just show you here for the first 3 minutes. I'm going to show you these settings. I'm also going to show you them again a bit later, but the reason why I found this testing so frustrating, I don't know what's going on with the optimization of this game, but it is very strange. I don't know if it's specific to the 3070, but what I was finding is that I had to have some of the settings fairly high. Now I couldn't have them all set to ultra because you'll see after I finish these clips, after about 3 minutes, that we'll jump to the ultra settings, everything to ultra, and that resulted in quite poor-ish results, I would say. I think it was about 75-80 frames per second average, but that will show you in a minute. But then what I thought I'd do was drop everything right down quite low, a few highs in there and a few mediums, but have majority of things that I thought would cause low frames per second set to low, and then a few that I thought would maybe make the game look a bit prettier set to the higher ones. What I actually found was that it didn't improve things very drastically. I was a bit disappointed with the performance that this game was getting, and this graphics card obviously was getting. And what I did notice was my CPU was getting fairly hot, and the GPU was sort of not really maxing out. So although it was still, actually looking at the best settings now, it was about the same as what we're getting there up in the top right hand corner, but the frames per second just weren't there. As you'll see, you can see through this gameplay, we're in the mid 150s, 60 sometimes 40. It does fluctuate, and I did test these settings out on a variety of maps, as we'll get to shortly. But yeah, that is why I found it so frustrating, because for whatever reason you can't just drop everything down to low. I guess you probably could drop everything right down, but the game wouldn't look very pretty. There's a balance that I'm trying to find, and I believe I have now with these settings. So I'm going to break down what I think are the more important ones to bear in mind, and as I said, at the end of the video there will be just the list run through for the last 30-40 seconds. So anyway, hopefully you're enjoying the gameplay as well. I'm trying to sort of do clips that are fairly interesting to look at, with lots of things going on as well, so it does kind of test out a worst case scenario for these settings, and it is going to vary map to map as well, so that's something to bear in mind. So I think we're just getting to the end of, well, in fact we have got to the end of the best settings. Now we're going to just have a quick look at what I put on as ultra. So it's just the preset, as you can see there, everything in ultra, and as I said, the frames obviously drop quite drastically as we'd imagine. It's still fairly smooth to play, to be honest with you. It didn't really have a huge issue. Everything was smooth enough, but it did lack a little bit. So I'm not going to spend very much time on this. I'm just sort of doing it more as a benchmarking activity, just to see what the worst case scenario was, and it seemed to be about 85 frames per second, depending on what's going on. Obviously this is a wide map as well, so bear that in mind. So after this, I'm going to show you again just that short few clips, about a minute's worth of when I tanked all the settings down to lows and mediums, and was getting very frustrated that the frames per second were still quite limited. And then we'll jump back down to what the best settings are, but on a few different matches. So here you go. You can see as I whiz through, there are a fair few highs, but there's also some lows, mediums, and even some offs as well. So I thought this would actually, boost things right up. I was looking to try and get to about 150, 160 frames per second. That was kind of my target, because I've got 165 frames per second hertz monitor. As you can see, with all those lows and some of those offs and mediums, I'm only getting 125 to 135 on average here. So as I've said a couple of times, was really annoyed. So then we're going to only show you a little bit of this because it was pretty much like this for the whole match. And I did try it on another map as well, but I didn't record the footage. So it wasn't a case of just this map being difficult. Anyway, I know I'm talking pretty fast as well because I just want to try and cram in as much information as possible. So now we're going to go through a couple of other maps just to show you that the frames per second and the performance is pretty steady. I know it does bounce between 135 to 160, so it does fluctuate, but that's just the nature of Twitch fast-paced first-person shooters. So I'm going to get onto the actual settings now and what I think are the key ones to bear in mind, and the list will pop up at the end of this video. But there are some key technical things to bear in mind as well. Now I do have my field of view set to 100 degrees rather than the default, so that may alter your results if you have that different. Obviously resolution scale 1080p. Now a key thing is to have your frame rate unlocked. If you have it locked at the maximum I'm talking about, don't worry about the minimum. If you have the maximum set to your monitor's maximum refresh rate, you're gonna limit your console, your system. I don't know why. I had, as I said, 165 is my monitor's maximum, so I had that set as the limit because I thought that would be a cap for it to work, you know, up to. But what actually happened was the CPU just said, well, I'm not going to bother working then. And as you can see now, it's between 40 and 50% utilization. When I put the max frame rate limiter on, it actually only went to 20% usage. So really annoying, but something you have to really bear in mind because you want to make use of that extra 20 to 50 20 to 30 frames per second. Sorry, I'm just trying to get to the list of the presets. So you want to make use of the CPU basically. Now, in terms of going down the list of the graphical changes to make, I had anti-aliasing set to high, texture filtering set to ultra, ambient occlusion set to medium. That's not that important. Texture quality, that is the big one. That is the main package of the textures, the main package of what you're going to be looking at. And I set that to ultra. When I set it down to high, it didn't help. It may have even hindered stuff because the frames and the performance went down. Geometry quality, I also set that to ultra. Reflections, they have a big impact on performance, and I set that to low. You could set them to off, but I wanted them there a little bit just to keep the GPU fighting to work. I feel like when everything was set to low, it just wasn't working, even though it said a high 90% utilization. Anyway, depth of field was high, shadow quality as medium. They're something you could play around with them a little bit if you want. The lighting might add a bit. The shadows probably not so much. Then the next one I turned off, so that's volumetric fog quality. Personally, that is just annoying to have any kind of fog or mistiness on the screen, so I wanted to get rid of those. Same with the clouds, I don't look up in the sky very often, so I've set them to low. I'm not sure if you can set them to off. But the next one, dynamic wind, set that to off. I don't really care if things are swirling around in the wind. So that's off. Then we've got ground cover quality, set that to high. I want the ground cover to look fairly decent. Effects quality set to medium. That's your explosions and your fire and gunfire. The plasma stuff. That's set to medium. Decal quality low. That's like your bullet impacts. I don't really care too much about that. Animation quality, set that to auto. Terrain quality, set that to ultra. So that's your grass and your flowers and your bushes and rocks and things like that. And terrain quality, oh, that was what I just said. Simulation quality, also set that to ultra. That seems to be more CPU focused, that setting. So again, you want to try and get your CPU to help out. And then flocking quality, I turned that off. That's your birds and things, creatures flying around. Don't want to see them and don't want resources using that. Then the only other things is the sentry stuff, which I don't think makes a huge amount of difference. I turned the full screen effects down to 50%, because that's like when your shields pop up, it does that honeycomb thing. But that's basically a run through of the settings as it's now going through on the video. I wasn't actually watching the video as it was doing that, so you can see what I'm talking about. Sorry if that's a bit disjointed listening to me and seeing the different settings come up. Hopefully it was a worthwhile video and you'll subscribe and look forward to more videos.